So the thing about Catherine being handed sole authority over every crown jewel is that it reportedly happened in the dead of night, while Charles was said to be gravely unwell, and the two people you'd expect right there beside him, his wife and his heir, were allegedly told in plain words to stay away. That isn't a family deciding together. According to sources, that's a man making certain nobody could stop his hand before the ink dried. And the detail that lingers, supposedly pulled from the royal solicitor's own private notes, is that he was asked twice whether he wanted Camilla or William present. Twice, he is claimed to have said no. None of this is confirmed by the palace. But if it's true, that single choice says more about what's unfolding behind those walls than any polished statement ever could. It reportedly begins at a reception for foreign dignitaries inside Buckingham Palace. And then, according to guests said to be present, Charles simply drops, collapses in front of the entire room. Security allegedly moves instantly, pulling phones from hands before a single image can escape, which means every account of that night comes only from the handful of people inside that room. Guests were reportedly ushered out through side doors. Doctors rushed in, sources claim, through an entrance almost nobody knew existed. And by the time they left his chambers, it was near midnight. Whatever they told him never reached the public. And here the timeline turns strange. Weeks later, Charles appeared on camera saying his treatment could be reduced in the new year, and the country seemed to exhale. It sounded like reassurance, but allegedly, that very same week, his doctors had taken him aside and told him something entirely different. A second marker had turned dangerous, and it was moving faster than anyone had braced for. If that claim holds, you have two contradictory stories running side by side. The public one, built around the soft word reduce, and the private one, where his own team is said to be quietly telling him to prepare for everything to accelerate. Someone, according to these accounts, chose to bury the second diagnosis and let the country believe the situation was under control. And that buried truth, if it's real, is the fire under everything that followed. Because if you're Charles, and you've just been told your time is far shorter than the world believes, you're not thinking about schedules, you're thinking about what happens the second you're gone. His private secretary reportedly begged him to wait until morning. He refused. Whatever those doctors said allegedly lit something in him that wouldn't survive another hour. The royal solicitor was reportedly pulled from bed after midnight and rushed to the palace to witness the signing of a document that would normally take months of legal review, compressed, it's claimed, into one silent room while the household slept. Before we go further, if this is holding your attention, subscribe to Royal Legacy so the next chapter doesn't slip past you. There's far more here, and by every account, it's still unfolding. The detail that makes it feel wrong comes from that solicitor's private notes. Before signing, Charles was allegedly asked twice whether he wanted Camilla or William beside him. Twice, he refused. This wasn't panic. He supposedly had the chance to call either of them and chose deliberately not to. If the notes are accurate, he locked them both out of the room where his family's entire future was being rewritten. And if you're wondering why a reportedly dying king would shut out the two people closest to him, the likeliest answer is also the coldest. Sources suggest he wanted no one present who might reach for the pen, slow him down, or carve their own name onto that page first. This wasn't a king sharing a decision with his family. Allegedly, it was a king protecting a decision from them. So he signs the emergency guardianship order, reportedly transferring sole authority over the crown jewels to Catherine. And according to people said to be present, he spoke exactly 3 words when it was done. It is done. No smile, no relief, just a flat, hollow voice. The sound, sources suggest, of a man who'd carried this weight for years and chose one silent midnight to finally set it down, whatever it cost the people he claimed to love. Some of you are already asking whether a king can even do this alone, in the middle of the night, without permission. The plain, verifiable answer is yes. The British monarchy runs on something called the royal prerogative, which grants a reigning monarch broad personal authority over anything tied to the crown. No vote, no parliament, nothing. The crown jewels sit squarely inside that power. So legally, Charles would be entitled to do exactly what's described. What made it reportedly extraordinary wasn't the right, it was the speed. Decisions like this, normally stretch across years, softened so nobody is blindsided. Charles, according to the account, crushed all of that into one midnight signature. And that alone, sources suggest, told everyone how much time he believed he had left. But while Charles reportedly sat alone with what he'd done, Camilla was said to be seconds from learning she'd never truly belonged to this family. She didn't hear it from her husband. According to a staff member said to be nearby, she heard it hours later, delivered in that careful, cold tone people use when they know their words are about to detonate. And she was reportedly already storming toward his study. In her fury, she allegedly forgot to fully close the door, and a staff member caught every word. She reportedly told Charles he'd made her irrelevant while she still breathed beside him as his wife. And his answer, according to that account, wasn't an apology. He allegedly told her the crown was never something a wife keeps, only ever something she was allowed to borrow. If those words were truly spoken, that single sentence stripped away everything polite this family ever pretended to be. He wasn't calling her a partner, he was calling her a guest. And this part is real. A consort in the House of Windsor doesn't inherit the throne and doesn't inherit the crown jewels. A consort only borrows access to certain jewelry at the pleasure of the reigning monarch, with the understanding that when he dies, most of that access disappears with him. Camilla would have known this in some distant way, but hearing it spoken to her face, allegedly in the same breath as the news that another woman had just been handed permanent control over those same treasures, would turn an old abstract fact into a fresh personal wound. And it didn't come from nowhere. Long before this night, sources claim, Camilla had personally asked the palace jewelry office to wear a specific historic diamond necklace for a state visit that mattered deeply to her. She was reportedly told it needed further review. That review never came. Then, 2 years later, that exact necklace allegedly appeared around Catherine's neck at a state dinner, and Camilla reportedly found out the way millions of strangers did, watching it live on her television. And she never once complained publicly. But according to people said to have worked closely with her, she quietly kept a careful record of every occasion where something she'd asked for reappeared later on, someone else. That kind of patient, buried anger tends to be far more dangerous than anything loud because it never fades, it only builds. And a staff member near the study that night reportedly caught something darker still. Camilla allegedly said she refused to be the second wife erased from 2 histories at once. Meanwhile, the woman who'd reportedly just taken her place, without asking for the war bundled with it, was already buckling. Before it became official, Catherine had allegedly looked Charles in the eye and begged him to wait. Not forever, just until things were less painful for everyone. And he said no. That answer alone, sources suggest, revealed how desperate he'd become. This part is real. Catherine built her own path, working within her family's small business, then survived illness that forced her from public life for months, while the world speculated behind her back. She fought her way back quietly and rebuilt her place piece by piece until she stood beside a visibly ailing king in front of the entire world. She'd already survived one fight. Nobody expected her to win. And now, by this account, she'd been handed another with no finish line in sight. So what is she reportedly holding? Not a title, not a photo. According to the account, the monarchy's crown jewels under her name alone, the Imperial State Crown, dripping with diamonds worth more than some nations hold in their treasuries. The St. Edward's crown, so sacred it appears only once a generation. The Cullinan and the Koh-i-Noor, where the history turns genuinely savage. That diamond's real past doesn't read like a jewel passed gently hand to hand. It reads like a body count. Owners blinded, some tortured until they surrendered it, others killed by rivals hungry enough to murder for it. And to this day, more than one nation openly insists it was taken, not gifted. If the account holds, Catherine hasn't inherited something to admire behind glass. She's inherited a diamond multiple governments still call stolen property, and she's now the one reportedly responsible for keeping it locked away, whether she fully grasped what she agreed to. And behind closed doors, the Crown's own lawyers were reportedly already whispering the one question nobody wanted spoken aloud, because here's what has reportedly never been said publicly until now. According to people said to be familiar with private discussions inside the palace, At least one senior legal advisor raised a possibility dark enough to unsettle anyone who thinks this story is finished, that Camilla, as Charles's surviving wife, could one day use her legal status as his widow to drag this exact order into a courtroom after he's gone. Nothing this binding has reportedly ever been attempted this far ahead of an actual coronation in this family's history, which would mean everything Catherine has just reportedly survived might not be the end of this war at all. It might be the opening shot. And then there's trooping the colour. According to people said to be close to the planning, palace staff have reportedly begun using language normally reserved for occasions of historic finality, the kind people use when they privately believe they're witnessing something for the last time. Extra medical personnel have allegedly been added to the coverage, a detail nobody inside the palace has explained, and reportedly nobody has bothered to deny either. Why would anyone need extra doctors standing by for a ceremony that has run every year for generations without incident? Ask yourself that, and you already sense why so many people close to this family believe they know what's coming. History rarely announces itself with a press release. It happens, if these accounts are true, in signed documents, in midnight rooms, in ancient jewels placed on a head that was never yet supposed to carry them, until suddenly, without warning, it does. The real question was never simply whether Catherine becomes queen one day. It was always how soon, and whether the crown she's reportedly guarding right now will even still belong to her by the time it finally does.